War has never been about strength alone. It's about systems, patterns that outlive kings, crush chance, and turn men into moving geometry. 2,000 years ago, one empire mastered that equation. Rome didn't just fight wars, it designed them. Its armies didn't charge blindly into glory. They measured, calculated, and executed with the precision of an engineer drawing blueprints for death. Each soldier was a cog in a living machine, synchronized, disciplined, terrifyingly patient. To face them wasn't to fight men, it was to face an algorithm written in iron and blood. And behind every victory, every wall, every silence after a storm, stood the same invisible genius, the tactic. A rule so efficient that it rewrote how humanity thinks about warfare. This is not a story about battles, it's a story about design, about how logic conquered chaos, and how the Roman army built the most perfect war machine the ancient world had ever seen. Now let's uncover the Roman battle tactics that changed history forever. One of the most shocking tactics the Roman army ever created looked less like a formation and more like a living machine. It was called the Testudo, and once you saw it in action, the name made perfect sense. It began as silence. No war cries, no thunder of hooves, just the sound of shields locking into place. Then, out of the haze, the shape appeared. Rows upon rows of Romans sealed together like the gears of a machine. Front shields forming a wall, top shields closing above like iron skin, sides tightening until no weakness remained. From a distance, it didn't look human. It looked engineered, a living fortress made of will and order. They called it the Testudo, the tortoise, and once you saw it move, the name fit perfectly. Arrows darkened the sky, but they clattered harmlessly away. Flames rolled across the roof of shields, dying before they could burn. Inside, the soldiers advanced in rhythm, step, brace, breathe, as one unstoppable organism. It wasn't just a defense. It was Roman logic turned into motion, a formation that crushed chaos under discipline. The Testudo had a flaw: speed. It couldn't turn quickly or react to sudden strikes. But few enemies ever reached its sides. Most broke long before impact. Because when that armoured wall crept toward you, it wasn't the soldiers you feared. It was the precision of Rome itself. The next Roman formation wasn't built for speed or strength. It was built for endurance. They called it the Triplex Acies, the three-line system that turned a Roman battlefield into a living equation. While most armies charged in a single wave and hoped for courage to last, Rome built layers, precision stacked on discipline. The first line, the Hastati, were the youngest, eager and untested. Behind them stood the Principes, stronger, seasoned, relentless. And in the rear waited the Triarii, old warriors who moved only when the battle's fate was certain. This was Rome's secret rhythm. The front attacked, then retreated through narrow gaps. Fresh soldiers flowed forward like clockwork. From above, it looked mechanical. 3 gears turning one after another. No shouting, no confusion, just motion, measured, continuous, unstoppable. Where others bled out, Rome rotated. Its strength was endurance disguised as order. When the Triarii finally advanced, the field fell silent. Everyone knew what it meant. The young had tested, the experienced had punished, and the old were there to end it. They even had a saying, "It has come to the Triarii," a phrase whispered with awe and finality. Because when Rome's last line moved, the enemy wasn't just losing the fight, they were witnessing the system close in. The next shocking battle tactic the Romans used wasn't about holding ground, it was about breaking it. They called it the Cuneus, the Wedge, a formation built to pierce the heart of an enemy line with terrifying precision. It was shaped like a triangle, narrow at the front, wide at the base, a living spearhead of shields and steel. The strongest soldiers formed the tip. Behind them, row after row pressed forward, channeling all force into one crushing point. When it hit, enemy walls didn't bend, they split open. From a distance it looked alive, a moving blade cutting through chaos. The sides widened as it advanced, turning formations into fragments and structure into panic. This wasn't a reckless charge, it was calculation, controlled, disciplined, mathematical violence. At Watling Street, this wedge formation smashed through a rebel army several times larger. At Pydna, it tore apart the legendary Macedonian phalanx, once considered unstoppable. Rome had proved again precision defeats power. The Cuneus was no ordinary tactic, it was geometry turned into war. The next shocking Roman tactic didn't happen on land, it happened at sea. They built the Corvus, Latin for raven. Carthage ruled the waves, faster ships, skilled crews, and generations of naval mastery. Rome had farmers who could barely swim. But instead of surrendering to the sea, they changed the rules. An 11-metre wooden bridge mounted on a Roman warship with an iron spike underneath its beak. When an enemy vessel came close, the bridge dropped like a trapdoor. The spike bit deep into the opposing deck, locking the ships together, and suddenly the sea became land. Roman soldiers surged across the bridge, shields up, swords drawn. Naval battle turned into infantry combat. Carthaginian speed meant nothing when Rome's legions fought hand-to-hand on their decks. At Mylae, the Corvus gave Rome its first naval victory. At Ecnomus, it crushed Carthage's fleet and turned the Mediterranean into Rome's next battlefield. It was brutal, brilliant, and completely unexpected. The device was heavy and dangerous, unstable in rough waters, slow to maneuver, but it didn't matter. For those crucial years, it transformed sailors into soldiers and the sea itself into another Roman road. The next shocking tactic the Romans used wasn't about force, it was about deception. They called it the Feigned retreat, a battle illusion where soldiers pretended to flee, inviting their enemies to chase, only to spring the trap when pride took over. It was the oldest trick in warfare, but Rome turned it into an art form. To fake defeat and keep order required iron discipline. Any other army would crumble for real. Rome didn't. Their soldiers could act panic while still obeying command. At Agrigentum in 262 BCE, the Carthaginian general Hanno used this very tactic against them. His Numidian cavalry drew Roman forces forward, straight into an ambush. Rome never forgot that lesson. Years later, during the Third Macedonian War, Roman general Aemilius Paulus faced the famed Macedonian phalanx. He ordered a controlled retreat. The phalanx followed, their formation breaking on uneven ground. At the perfect moment, Rome turned. The counterattack ripped the Macedonian line apart, ending their empire in a single reversal. The feigned retreat wasn't about courage, it was about patience, obedience, and timing sharper than any sword. To chase a retreating Roman was to take the bait, and more than one proud commander learned that too late. The next tactic wasn't forged by swords, it was built by genius, Caesar at Alesia in 52 BC. Alesia, a Gallic stronghold perched high between two rivers. Inside waited Vercingetorix and 80,000 defenders. Outside stood Julius Caesar with 60,000 men, outnumbered, exposed, surrounded. Any other general would have starved below those walls. Caesar decided to starve the enemy inside them. He ordered his legions to build. First, a wall, the circumvallation. 10 miles of trenches, ramparts and towers circling Alesia to trap the defenders. Then a second wall, the contravallation, facing outward, 20 miles long, to hold off the coming relief army of 250,000 Gauls. 2 walls, one inward, one outward. A fortress that fought in both directions. The defences were layered. Deep water-filled ditches, sharpened stakes, and hidden pits. Earthworks topped with wooden palisades and 23 towers packed with archers and slingers. A mechanical ring of death tightening by the hour. When the relief army finally arrived, the world witnessed something new. Romans fighting on 2 fronts at once. Gauls outside trying to break in, Gauls inside trying to break out. Neither succeeded. That day, Caesar didn't just win a siege, he redesigned the very idea of one. At Alesia, Rome proved that intellect could trap an empire. The next Roman tactic was born from terror itself: war against giants, elephants, and fire pigs. When war elephants first appeared on the battlefield, most armies broke and ran. The Romans didn't. They studied. They learned that elephants were not strategy. They were sound, and sound could be used against them. Rome built lanes into their formations, opened corridors wide enough for charging beasts to pass through harmlessly. As the elephants thundered forward, the legionaries waited, spears poised, striking low, legs, eyes, underbellies, turning strength into confusion. But that was only the beginning. Ancient accounts tell of a weapon so strange, so cruel, it sounded like myth. Pigs, covered in pitch, set on fire, and released squealing toward the enemy's elephants. The sight, the sound, unbearable. The great beasts panicked, crashing through their own lines, trampling the soldiers they were meant to protect. At Beneventum it broke the charge of Pyrrhus of Epirus. At Zama it helped shatter Hannibal's last stand. Even centuries later, Roman coins bore the image of elephants and pigs, a silent reminder of the day Rome turned fear into a weapon. The enemies adapted, raising young elephants beside piglets to dull the terror. But for a time, it worked. Brilliantly, horribly, undeniably. Because Rome understood something others didn't. Terror only rules those who still believe in it.